Turning now to the U.S. and the race to pick a Democratic candidate for president. And Bernie Sanders is emerging as the front runner after what appears to be a comfortable win in the Nevada caucuses. This will be his second straight victory following a success in New Hampshire. With half the vote counted, here's where things stand right now. Sanders has almost 50% of the vote, almost 3 times the ballots cast for second Joe Biden, with 19%. It's his best showing in the 3 polls to date. Pete Buttigieg is third with 15%. Sanders celebrated his success at a rally in Texas, one of a number of states holding votes in 9 days.
In Nevada and in New Hampshire and in Iowa, what we showed is that our volunteers are prepared to knock on hundreds and hundreds of thousands of doors. That no campaign has a grassroots movement like we do, which is another reason why we're going to win this election.
Well, yesterday's vote didn't go off without a hitch. Officials reported voting confusion over rules, calculation glitches, and delays in reporting tallies. But those issues were nothing like the problems that plagued the Iowa caucuses. Sanders' win in Nevada is seen as significant because it is one of America's most ethnically diverse states. And it's a significant but. There's a long way to go in this race. Up next, South Carolina primary next Saturday. Then comes what is called Super Tuesday. 15 primaries and caucuses, including delegate-rich states like California, Texas, North Carolina, and Virginia. Former New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg will be on the ballot there for the first time. More than 1,300 delegates will be up for grabs, and a candidate needs almost 2,000 overall to secure the Democratic presidential nomination. Well, for more on Sanders' win in Nevada, we're joined by Roger Fisk. He's a principal at New Day Strategy, a communications consulting firm, and he is a former campaign strategist for U.S. President Barack Obama, and he's kindly agreed to join us early on a weekend morning. Thanks for joining us, sir, from Harper's Ferry in beautiful West Virginia. Let's talk about Sanders' win and what you make of it.
Good morning, John. Thanks so much for having me. Very interesting night. I think the biggest narrative coming out of last night is not just the fact that Sanders won, which was largely somewhat expected, but there really is no second or third or fourth. The gap between Senator Sanders and the former vice president is so huge. I believe it's 46 to 19. The biggest thing that anyone coming in second or third would have wanted coming out of Nevada would be the clicks and the small dollar donations and a sense of momentum. And similar to Iowa, although not with the technical kind of stumbles that we saw there, no one's coming out of Nevada with any kind of momentum. And virtually all the campaigns under the front runner are on some form of life support, and with the exception of Mayor Bloomberg. And then looking forward, if we go with the conventional wisdom that the former Vice President Biden is poised to do well in South Carolina, he needs to do very well, because for everyone except for Senator Sanders, this was an extremely weak showing last night.
Senator Sanders talked about the grassroots, the ground game they have, and of course, as you well know, that can really make a difference in a successful bid. Do you think he has that ground game, and do you think it'll sustain?
I do. I mean, if you look at his numbers from 2016, and I found this very interesting to kind of track things through Iowa and then New Hampshire. New Hampshire, he lost a little bit in some of the more liberal enclaves. But if you look at his performance last night, I believe in 2016, he got 37% of the vote. Last night, he got 36.7. So he almost is spot on to reconstituting the numbers that he had the first time around. You can't overestimate the benefit of having run once, because that means, especially going into Super Tuesday, he can look at 6 and 8 states and know that he has dependable organizers there who are going to meet their numbers and turn out their votes. For everyone else on the ballot, again, with the exception of Mayor Bloomberg because of money, they have to be very, very surgical and very, very economic about where they spend resources on Super Tuesday. Because, for example, if you want to go in and try to play in California, that's going to burn up all your resources, your staff, your paid advertising funds, and everything else at the expense of a Colorado, at the expense of a Virginia, at the expense of a Texas, et cetera. So everyone else except Senator Sanders and Mayor Bloomberg are in a position where they just have to pick one thing off the Christmas tree for example, of Virginia for Senator Warren or something like that. So he's in an extremely strong position coming out of last night.
So you seem to be painting a picture of an almost inevitable Bernie Sanders win.
Well, it'll be interesting to see who, for example, last spring when Mayor Buttigieg had a little moment in the sun and he got a lot of clicks and a lot of donations, he did manage to staff up. Different than, for example, a Senator Klobuchar, who just had, kind of a resurgence in New Hampshire. That's not enough time to hire the people that you need to cover the geographic map on a Super Tuesday. So the question is, organizationally, when Buttigieg had that moment 7 or 8 months ago, how far down the map, how far down the calendar did he start to place his bets? Did he start to staff up? So if he actually has boots on the ground in a Colorado, in a Virginia, in a Maine, then he could come out of Super Tuesday with a relatively robust organizational showing. Right now, Senator Sanders and Mayor Bloomberg are the only ones who can drop money in all those media markets. You can spend $35 million in California and still only touch 6 or 8% of the population.
One more quick question we just have time for, sir. Bernie Sanders, lifelong independent. There's talk, of course, of the Democratic Party establishment. Are they, whatever you define them as, are they in a state of apoplexy now at the thought that Bernie Sanders could be their candidate to go up against Donald Trump?
I would imagine there's concern. I mean, a lot of folks have said all along that, Sanders is kind of the ideal candidate for Trump because, as we see with the current occupant of the White House, he's going to paint whoever he's up against as a socialist. And then the question is whether or not you can turn around if it's a Bloomberg or a Biden or a Buttigieg and prove by virtue of how you've lived your life that you are in fact a capitalist and that you find great value in a market-based economy. But then all of a sudden, if it's a Senator Sanders and that arrow finds a thematic bullseye, then you're essentially strengthening the president's hand. That's not to say that a growing Sanders coalition couldn't counter that, but it is playing very neatly into the narrative that the president would like to have heading into the fall. All right, we'll be watching this. Thanks for helping us do it. We'd love to have you on again. Your input's been fantastic. Thanks so much. Roger Fisk, a former campaign strategist for President Barack Obama, and he joined us from Harpers Ferry, West Virginia.